How does a country with no natural resources, no farmland, and barely any land become one of the most powerful and strategic nations on Earth? Singapore wasn't supposed to succeed. When it became independent in 1965, many experts believed it would collapse under pressure, surrounded by larger neighbors, lacking resources, and deeply vulnerable to global shocks. Yet today, Singapore is not just surviving, it is quietly shaping global trade, finance, technology, and geopolitics far beyond what its size suggests. This is not a story of loud military dominance or aggressive expansion. Instead, it's a story of precision, planning, discipline, and long-term vision. Singapore mastered the art of being indispensable to the world, so valuable that no major power can afford to ignore or destabilize it. In this video, we'll uncover how Singapore transformed its weaknesses into strengths, built influence without confrontation, and positioned itself as a strategic nerve center of the global system. By the end, you'll understand why Singapore proves that in the modern world, power is no longer measured by size, but by strategy. Point 1. Strategic geography turned into global leverage. Singapore's greatest advantage was something it couldn't change: its location. Sitting at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, Singapore lies beside the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest and most critical shipping lanes in the world. Around one-third of global maritime trade passes through this narrow corridor every year. Instead of treating geography as fate, Singapore treated it as leverage. From the beginning, its leadership invested heavily in port infrastructure, logistics efficiency, and maritime security. Singapore didn't just become a port, it became the port. Ships stopping here could refuel, repair, insure cargo, and reroute goods faster than anywhere else in Asia. This transformed Singapore into a choke point of global commerce. Any disruption to Singapore would ripple across global supply chains, oil markets, and manufacturing hubs. That reality alone gives Singapore strategic importance far beyond its borders. But the country went further. It positioned itself as a neutral, reliable, rule-based hub trusted by everyone, from Western corporations to Chinese state-owned firms. In geopolitics, trust is power. By controlling flow rather than territory, Singapore proved that modern influence lies in connectivity. It doesn't need to dominate land, it dominates movement. Point 2. Economic discipline over natural resources. Singapore had no oil, no gas, no minerals, so it made something else its resource: credibility. Strict anti-corruption laws, transparent governance, and long-term economic planning turned Singapore into one of the safest places in the world to do business. Investors knew that contracts would be honored, laws would be enforced, and politics wouldn't interfere unpredictably. The government actively guided economic evolution, moving from manufacturing to high-tech industries, finance, biotech, and digital services. Each phase was carefully timed to global demand cycles. Singapore also created sovereign wealth funds like Temasek and GIC, turning national savings into global influence. These funds quietly invest across continents, embedding Singapore into the global financial system. The result? Even without resources, Singapore became a financial command center, one that global markets rely on for stability in Asia. In a resource-driven world, Singapore proved that discipline beats abundance. Point 3. Military strength without aggression. Despite its peaceful image, Singapore maintains one of the most technologically advanced militaries in Asia. Why? Because vulnerability demands preparedness. Surrounded by larger nations, Singapore adopted a doctrine of deterrence. It doesn't threaten, but it ensures that any threat would come at an unacceptable cost.
Mandatory national service created a population psychologically invested in defense. Advanced Air Force capabilities, cyber defense, and intelligence partnerships give Singapore strategic depth without expansion. Importantly, Singapore never postures. Its military strength is quiet, defensive, and professional, earning respect without provoking fear. This balance allows Singapore to remain neutral, stable, and secure, making it an ideal host for diplomacy, trade, and multinational operations. Point 4. Diplomatic neutrality as a superpower tool. Singapore speaks to everyone and takes sides with no one. It maintains strong ties with the United States while deepening economic integration with China. It works closely with ASEAN, Europe, and the Middle East without ideological entanglements. This neutrality allows Singapore to host sensitive summits, negotiations, and arbitration cases. When rivals need a neutral ground, Singapore becomes the natural choice. Diplomacy here is not emotional, it's transactional, pragmatic, and future-oriented. By never burning bridges, Singapore ensures it always has options. In geopolitics, options are power. Point 5. Long-term thinking in a short-term world. While most nations plan around election cycles, Singapore plans in decades. Urban design, education policy, population management, water security, and technology adoption are all part of long-term national survival strategy. The government invests heavily in human capital, AI, automation, and sustainability. Every policy answers one question: will this still work 30 years from now? This mindset turns uncertainty into advantage. While others react to crises, Singapore anticipates them. In a chaotic world, predictability itself becomes influence. Singapore's story isn't about miracles, it's about choices. At every turning point, it chose discipline over populism, strategy over emotion, and long-term survival over short-term applause. It understood that in a globalized world, power doesn't always wear a uniform or wave a flag. Sometimes power looks like efficiency. Sometimes it looks like trust. And sometimes it looks like a small nation that everyone depends on, but no one can control. Singapore didn't become powerful by trying to dominate the world. It became powerful by making itself essential to it. And that may be the most dangerous kind of power there is.